So this video is about elevations, how to give quality of line to your elevations. Before I even move forward, I just want to thank whoever posted this model of Tadao Ando's building, the 4x4 house. I modeled what you can see on ARCHICAD, less than an hour just by bringing this SketchUp model into ARCHICAD and just tracing over it, and it was super easy, and it was fun actually, because I had never really played with this project, and I just thought it was a really interesting experience. So at the bottom of the video I'm going to attach the link to the file, and I may create another video on how to bring SketchUp models or information, to just trace over it in ARCHICAD, and just super easy. And this guy, Juan Carlos Valenzuela, just happens to be a fellow from Mexico, Sonora. That's when my family was born, so that's so cool. Anyway, so what we already know that we can turn on colors on the elevations. We can change to the on-surface colors and shade it, and then we can also turn on shadows on an elevation, and that's one of the features that has been around for a while, and that's pretty cool, but that's not what some people want. So I think there is some sort of nostalgia, being able to control the pen width, and I do have some of that because I was drawing with rapider graphs and all that kind of stuff even before I switch to the digital world. So I do get what all of you are asking for, and this is why I'm making this video. So I'm just going to return this to the original settings. I'm going to turn off shadows for now. So what we want to do is go from here to this kind of representation, right, where we have different pen widths that makes you feel closer or farther from the different elements without the need of color or other things. It's not that hard, though you need to wrap your mind around a few concepts. And I'm going to explain here. What I used for this was the property manager, which was introduced in ARCHICAD 20, and it's a huge and powerful tool that allows you to, possibilities are endless. And then I use graphic overrides, which is what changes the way you visualize something. This is pretty much based on two steps. One where you create the rules, and I'm going to go over that, and then when you create your combinations. Once you start implementing this, you may find that you need to do some pen adjustments, obviously, because you may want pens to be thicker or thinner depending on how you're playing with them, and then maybe some surface adjustments, and that is just to change some colors. So let's jump in. I'm just gonna go here, main concept first, and this is based on ARCHICAD. Is not gonna be, if you define, your pens or thickness based on the view, you may apply some properties on the front view or objects that are closer to the front view, but then when you're looking on the right view, those objects, if they have pen, properties, they may represent wrong, because it's a different elevation, but you're controlling the object itself. And this is why it is important to be able to let the object say, okay, when I'm looking at you from the front, I want you to be this pen width, but when I'm looking at you from the right, you need to have a different pen width, and so on, with the back and the left. So we're going to assign properties to the object that are just related to which side you are looking from. And we thought it was just easier to go front, back, right, and left, and credits to JT here. At first I was kind of confused, do I go north, south, but then is it the north on the drawing or the north on the project, and then that changes, and then it may make it confusing. And then I thought about going hours, 12, 1, 3. But I think, the front of the building is always the front of the building. The back is always back, and again, right and left. So we thought making it this way would be easier. You may want to change it. You may want to implement, your own standards, which is pretty much what you can do with everything in ARCHICAD. We're just trying to give you an idea, and then you can implement it in the way that it makes most sense to you. Now let's just jump to the property manager, which is where you assign those properties. And I'm going to show you the ones that I have already made. Let's see here. Okay, I made a group here, which is called graphic representation. And as you can see here, I created some properties based on elevation, front, right, left, and back. Now, let me explain a little bit of how these properties are, because not many people are using them, and this is just great. These are some properties that you may be familiar already with, the ARCHICAD objects now have. Now you can introduce, whatever you want to attach to the object. You want to attach manufacturer, model, serial number, barcode, blah, blah, blah. All of these are things that you can attach, and this is very useful because when you touch your, like for example, if you publish your model to BIMX, you can touch an object, and you can have manufacturer, model number, serial number, and so forth. In this case, these have been grouped into facilities management, so that makes it, easier to track information. If you sell a house, if you attach, when was that air conditioning installed, they can just go to the BIMX model and see, okay, this air conditioner was by this manufacturer. You can even attach the number of the guy. And let's just create one new property. So I'm just going to create a new property, and I'm going to call it here, I don't know, right? Let's just say, I don't know, AC company. And it asks me here what group I want to add it to. So facilities management, okay. And I want to add, general. I can say, true, false, numbers, whatever. So I'm just going to create here general. So this allows me to, enter company and phone number. Okay, and then this is just another property that now the objects can have. I can, move this up. I can say, what is it that I want this property to be able to attach to? Let's say I just wanted to be able to attach it to air terminal, or so I just go here in custom, and then I just type in air. I need to expand this a little bit. There you go, air terminal, air heat recovery, air terminal box. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but basically, this is what. Now those properties are going to be seen on these elements, and that would be it. So, but now based on this, just a little quick overview. So I created, you can also create different groups. I created a group called graphic representation, and to create groups, you just go here, and say I want a new group that is going to be for scheduling, right? Which is another great use that you can have for the property management. So, scheduling. And so you have another group that is called scheduling, and you can add, okay, I want a new properties, and it can just be on schedule. Right, and I'm going to group it to scheduling, and it's going to be just true or false, true or false, right? And so whenever, and this is going to be available for all objects. So basically now, whenever you are creating a schedule, you can say, okay, I want to schedule everything that says true on that option. If it says false, just get it out of the schedule. And that's just an option that you can add to your schedule properties. I hope you are familiar with schedules. If not, you know, we will continue making some videos about this. But so this is just as easy as that. So what I did here is I created an option, you know, for elevation front. So on that option, what I did is I'm just gonna create a little mock here. So I named it elevation front temporary. I'm gonna call it right now, right? And it goes to graphic representation, right? And it's here. And then I just say, okay, I want to have different options. Yeah, it's an option set. Once I have an option set, I can. So what are the options? So my first option is just no override, which is the object is gonna remain exactly the way it is. Second option would be thickness 1. And I'm just gonna copy this here so I can, you know, so I'm gonna add another one. I'm gonna paste thickness 2, add, paste, thickness 3, add, paste, thickness 4, and you can go as far as you want to go here. I created another one which I call silhouette. You know, for things that you just want to be grayed out in the back. And I created another one that it was solid. For things that you want to just like full black, you know, sometimes you want that in, you know, the ground or stuff like that. So these are my different options. Like I said, you can customize this. You can go as far as you want to go, you know, just creating different pen widths. But I mean, at some point, it may not be noticeable, you know, difference between one or the other if you have too many options. That's it. So this is the property, right? And this just looks as the other ones that I already made. Oh, I think something I forgot. No, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the one that I just created is not available to any object. You want to make it available to. I just in this case I just went with all objects, you know, because I thought that it may be useful to apply it to whatever we have on the screen. So and this is pretty much what I had. This what I have already created. Like I said, no override, thickness 1, 2, 3, 4, silhouette and solid, and it is the same thing for all 4 sides. This is all the properties that you want to create. I'm just going to delete this one here because I don't need it. Delete anyway. And then I'm just going to export right now. This is not something that you have to do on every project. Once you do it, the best way to go is save it to your template, but if not, you can also export it. And I'm gonna export it and have it in the bottom of this video. So I'm just gonna bring here, you know, graphic representation. I'm gonna bring all this group. I'm gonna export it. And what do you want to export? I'm gonna export all the selected. Just link to exported properties. And we're gonna go OK here. Well, no, new folder, 4x4, graphic tutorial. We're just gonna leave it there for now. And I can, you know, properties. Okay, they were successfully exported. Okay, once you have that, right, we go to the next step, and that is the graphical overrides. And if I go to my elevation, let's say here, you know, you can have no override. I'm not touching the ARCHICAD elevation. I'm just applying some overrides that are telling ARCHICAD, you know, this element, when it's, you know, has this property, change the line type to another. So I just go to the an override here, and it changes the representation. So those graphic overrides are on document, graphic overrides, and you will see here that I have elevation front, and now we're gonna make elevation right. But obviously before we jump into creating something new, I'm going to show you how the original one works. So I'm going to go to the graphic override. So combinations. So here we have the different combinations for different purposes in ARCHICAD. In this case, the elevation front is using some rules that I have defined already. So those rules we can see if we click here. We can see that the rule number 1 says, when elevation, it's called elevation front 1, which is the one that changed the line type for the object at the first plane of thickness. And all I'm saying is that when an object is any type and the properties, elevation front from graphical representation is using the group that we created, is thickness 1, then I want you to override. You could even override the line type, but we don't need to do that in this case. I want you to override the line for pen. In this case, I'm using 150, which is 1 millimeter of thickness. And we'll see later that you can change that as well. But so that's the line type, right? I'm overriding also the fill, foreground and background. In this case is the block that you see here, right? So I'm saying the fill, foreground, I don't know if it was made with a different color or whatever. I'm asking ARCHICAD to use full black for it. But now I don't want to use the 1 millimeter. I'm using here, the one that is a 0.1 millimeter. So that just creates the difference between this thickness and the thickness in the back. And that's it. You can override if you want, other stuff, color only or color and thickness. And you can override surfaces as well if you wanted to. But, we're just going to stick to what we're trying to do here. So, number 2, so I said everything that is on elevation front that has thickness number 2, and you can change that here, and it's giving you the properties that we had defined before for that criteria, right? So everything that is thickness number 2, I want you to use, again, line. I'm going here to the different shades, and these are the different shades that I'm going to be using for this elevation. I'm using black for first plane. This looks like 80%, maybe 60% gray, 40% gray. So I'm going for the thick one here for the line, and I'm going for the 0.1 millimeter for the fill pattern, right? And these are fill pattern, and I'm using for background, I'm just going here to transparent. I don't want to have anything just in case I want to apply color later or something like that, like an overlay, or you could say underlay. Anyway, so rule number 3, whatever is thickness 3, right? I want you to use this pen 60% on 0.6 millimeters, and on the fill pattern, I want you to use, the 0.1. And now it's number 4, I want you to use blah, blah, blah. So same thing. As you can see, it's not complex. It's just, actually, it is complex. It's not complicated. It is complex because you need to create several rules to use. But it's not complicated. It's repetitive tasks. And once you do it once, like I said, you can just leave it as that. I created an extra one where I am using silhouette. And if you remember, we enabled that as one of the options. So when I said, something has a property of a silhouette, I'm overriding pretty much everything in here. And I'm overriding the line type, I'm overriding the line marker, fill type, I'm going to 100%, and I'm using the 20% white here, or gray, And what I'm trying to do with this is just override everything and turn it into a solid light element. And that is what you see here, that's what's happening with this tree. As you see, this tree does not have any other information in it except, just like a silhouette, light gray silhouette in the back. And then we have the solid, right? And that's what I'm using here on the ground. So I'm saying, you know, everything that says solid, I need you to use, you know, the pen 150, right? Because I'm assuming it's going to be on the forefront, you know, so I want to have the same thickness around it. And then I'm changing the fill type to 100%, and then the pen, you know, to complete black. So that's what's happening here on the ground. So those are my rules. These are the rules that are used for this combination. As you see here, I have the elevation front, and as you see, those combinations, these are the ones that we have just, you know, been talking about. And that's what ARCHICAD uses to make this override. So when I have an override, ARCHICAD shows everything the way it's supposed to. When I have overrides, is using, you know, those changes that I'm specifying here. Now, how does ARCHICAD know what's what, right? And that is just a property that is now available for the objects. And again, this may be a little tricky, but what I'm doing here is I am applying those properties from the object properties. So here, if I go to elevation front, I see that these objects have those properties available to themselves. So if I say here I want to have number 1, you see that they change to the number 1, like to this like front plane, right? If I go back to thickness 3, then they change the representation. So this is something that is going to have to be done on the elevations, and that's, you know, hopefully once you are close to the end of your project, or at least, you know, to where there won't be many changes. You can always, you know, reset the properties on anything or change them back to no override, but it has to be done independently by object. So if I go to, let's say, to the we're talking here about the front elevation. We're going to go to the right elevation now, right? Which in ARCHICAD's template language would be east elevation. So here you go. Now we already have the properties for the east. You will go to the property manager. We already have elevation right. We have the options. We see here, I see here that this is not available full object, so I'm just going to make sure that it is. Now it is. So I can select. What happens if I don't actually, yes, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm just going to click here now. So if I change here, if I go to properties, I only see properties for elevation front. That is because the other properties have not been enabled for all the objects. So I'm just going to go to the options, property management, and I'm going to enable this to all objects, and I see that none of them were. So I'm going to enable them, and now if I select the object and I go to the properties, you see that now all properties are available for this object. And so how does ARCHICAD know, you know, like for example, this geometry here is on first plane, you know, if you're looking from the front. And in this case, it is first plane if you're looking from the right side, but it may not be the case. Like this may be a good example. This wall here, it's first plane on the front elevation, but it's actually fourth plane on this elevation. So you see here that it has, for the front elevation, it has thickness 1, but for the right elevation, it's going to have thickness 4.
right? And so this is how ARCHICAD will know, depending on the elevation, what kind of pen is going to override it with. For back, we see that it's going to be first plane, so I'm just going to go here and do it right now. You know, it's just going to be thickness 1, right? And left, just from the other side, it's actually going to be thickness 1 as well. So this is how you're going to control the different planes and the different pen sets. It's a little bit manual, but if you do this in AutoCAD, it's a little bit more manual, or I would say is not a little at all. You know, it's just all manual. You know, you're not just changing pens for the different, you know, sides or the different elevations, but you're actually drawing the geometry yourself, right? And if it changes, okay, you have to change all the elevations. In this case, you know, something changes in the project, everything already has its properties. You don't need to be making or generating the information again. So I have some properties applied. I am going to create a graphical override. So graphical override, I'm going to go to the combinations. I think I had one started, but I did not finish. I would recommend you to be consistent with your naming. So I'm just going to change this one here, Eelevations. And that way they're going to be grouped together. So you don't need to be like, where's the elevation? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. So that's the override. I don't have any rules applied. Actually, I don't know if I made them. It seems like I have. So let's see. So I'm going to add the rule here, elevation right 1. And I'm going to make sure it is what I want it to be. I'm going to go to the property and I'm going to say it is not actually complete. So we're going to add here, you know, element is all types. And I'm going to go here to properties, graphical representation, elevation left, right? Oh, right, sorry. And I say when elevation right is thickness 1, override, line marker, 150, that is correct. And the foreground for the fill pattern, 141, that's correct. And the fill background is just going to be empty. That is correct. So right now that I'm here, I'm going to check the other rules. I'm going to go to number 2. It does not have any properties, so I'm going to add here elevation right when it's number 2. And it's already picking up, I don't know why, but it's already picking up the pens and the things that I need to override. So that's good. Elevation 3, right 3, I'm just going to add here the property and say when it's thickness 3, I want you to use that this is correct. Number 4, add property when it's number 4. Again, I'm going to share this with you. Hopefully you don't need to make it, you just need to understand how it is. I'm just explaining what I'm doing here so you can tweak it to your specific needs. So 4 is good. What else do we need to do? I believe silhouette. So I'm going to create a new one and I'm going to name it elevation right. Oh. Silhouette, right? I'm going to add a property here, elevation right. When I said it's silhouette, I want you to override everything, is what we said, right? I'm going to say pen is going to be this one here, you know, 20%. I'm going to override all its properties. I'm going to make it 100% full, and I'm going to make the foreground and I'm gonna, again, same pen and background pen, I'm gonna use the same one. And I'm gonna do that for just in section, in surface, and even fill pattern, doesn't matter. So I just want everything to turn to like just one blotch of the same color. That's what I'm saying here. So that's silhouette, and let's just create a solid one. New. And I can duplicate actually elevation front solid. So it's gonna have the properties. Well, it's gonna rename it anyway. Let me see if I can do this here. Right, solid. Okay, so seems like it's already there. Again, here what we're doing is overriding the pen. You know, there's going to be the thickness of the thick pen for the outer lines. It's going to be changing the cut because you're usually cutting the ground. So that's what I'm trying to use here. And I'm just changing, you know, the fill foreground, background for the object. So anyway, it's here. And now I'm going back to the graphic override combination. Right now, where I was playing with was inside of the rules. This is the original one. This is the right one. It only has one rule. I'm going to add rule number 2, rule number 3, rule number 4, silhouette, and solid. There you go. So those are the rules that I need. And I'm going to click here, OK. Right, so nothing has changed. Actually, maybe something has. I want to see. Oh yeah, I know why. I'm going to here is elevation right. Okay. So all I need to do now is just go to my objects. In this case, for example, this one is going to have an elevation right is going to have thickness 1 along with this one too. Good. So I have some modeling issues here because I just went over some SketchUp model here, and I think I was not too careful with this. So this is second plane. I'm going to change this properties to, on the right is going to be thickness 2. You can see that it's overriding here, right? And maybe we're going to put this on thickness 3. Elevation right, thickness 3. And now you don't necessarily need to be selecting, you know, as manually as I am doing right now here. You can, in this case, you know, just select everything and say, you know, everything, you know, as a starting point, I'm just gonna assign for everything for elevation, you know, thickness number 3, and you can start from there, and then just make. It's not gonna affect the other ones because the property that you are changing is just for the elevation left. It's not gonna affect your plans. It's not gonna affect the other elevations. So you can just change everything to a specific one, and then go from there, fine tuning, you know, whatever other elements are in the forefront or whatever, you know, to the property that you want to have. I'm just gonna change here, elevation right. I'm gonna say this to, okay. Well, I'm just gonna show you something. This is pretty much how silhouette works. You know, silhouette changes everything into just a you know, same fill pattern, no other elements visible. It's just like a black thing. So I'm gonna go here to the property manager. I see that for elevation right, I did not enable the property for solid. So I'm just gonna add it here. I'm gonna add solid. And now it's part of the options. Okay, and I'm just gonna go here to these two and I'm going to change the properties. Now it's going to be available. I have solid as an option that I can use now. It's not changing the lines because I'm not cutting. I set up the solid to be as cut plane or to be represented when you're using it as a cut plane. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring my elevation here into the geometry just for the sake of for the example. I'm going to go back to my elevation, and there you go. So as you can see now, you have the different pen. Something I did on the other elevation is I changed the color of the windows, and that is very easily done. And so let me just do a recap here. So right now we already understand what the property manager is. We already know what the graphic overrides are. You know, we went over the rules, which is when you say whenever something has this property, I want you to change the line type or the pen and the color. And then we created the combinations where we're saying, you know, apply this rule, this rule, this rule. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the pen set adjustments and surface adjustments. In this case, I'm going to start with the surface adjustment, and that is just, you know, for graphical representation of the windows. I'm going to go here to my east elevation. I don't like windows just showing like that, so I'm just going to go to the surface settings. I know those windows are using the blue glass blue eyes, and all I'm going to do here is, you know, whenever something's blue eyes on the vectorial hatching, I want you to use 100% of a I don't know, I like kind of like a little bit of a dark gray, so I'm just going to go here for 131. And also I know that other windows are using the glass clear fast. These are probably the two ones that you will see more on ARCHICAD windows. So I'm going to do it right now, saying, you know, it's going to be 100% on the same pen. Right, and so what that does is it enables, you know, you to see the windows in a dark color. I just think that's better in this case. You know, there aren't many windows, but when you have, you know, a larger window, I think it looks more interesting. So and one last thing, I'm just gonna add a property for, you know, objects. I'm going to go here to my east elevation. As you can see, it goes back to the ARCHICAD elevation. I'm going to change here the override elevation right. And my layers, I'm going to turn off my SketchUp model here. So what I want to do is, you know, make this object into a silhouette as well. So I'm going to create a new rule, graphic overrides rules, and I'm gonna say that for elevation right, here, elevation right, silhouette object, and it's a new rule. So, and I'm just gonna say here, when something is an object, I want you to override pretty much everything about it into silhouette mode, which is, you know, 111 fill type. It's going to be 100%. Everything is going to be to the 111 pen, and background is going to be, again, I'm just going to change everything about it to the so I'm saying everything that's an object, turn it into that. So I'm going to add that to the rule now, graphic overall combination. I'm going to go to the elevation right combination, and I'm going to add here elevation right silhouette object. Now it's part of the rules here, and now it's going to change this object into silhouette. And you can, if you want to, you can copy as many copies as you wish, and it applies the same thing. Pen sets. So let's say that you're not too happy. You probably want this second one to be a little bit thicker, because even though it's on the second plane, just the fact that you're changing the color may work for you. You just want it to be thicker. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about pen sets here, pens, colors. So ARCHICAD has its own pens, and that's what we have been using. We have been using, the thicker and the thinner of black, gray, dark gray, medium gray, light gray, blah, blah, blah. So let's say you want to change, let's say for you, this is second plane, it's not thick enough, 1.42. You can change this thickness here. Once you change it, it's gonna change to custom. I'm just gonna change it here. I'm gonna say I want this one to be 2, right? So it's gonna be a 2. You see, when you change it, it creates a custom, pen set. And that's fine. You may want to do that, and you may want to change maybe all of your thicker, into a thicker line. You may want to play with these colors. And then when you are done with the changes, you can just store as and, name it graphical, whatever. In this case, I already changed the name and I created graphical representation here. So what happens is that on your pen sets, if I go to graphical representations, you see that there are no changes, because apparently I didn't do anything for that pen specifically. But I'm just going to go here to pens and colors. I'm going to change this one. It's already 2. Let's see here. I'm just going to make it just for, let's say 4, right? And I'm going to store it as, I'm not sure I'm playing with the right plane, but anyway, graphical representation, override. Okay. You see how it changes? So now then, to adjust, all you have to do is just go to your pens and play with them. I'm just going to go here again, pens and colors. Let's say this one, maybe I want it to be 3, but then the second plane I want it to be, I don't know, 2.25, and then this one I want it to be actually 2, and this one I want it to be 2.5, and the silhouette I want it to be 1.5. So I'm just kind of creating some sort of standard thing here, and I'm going to store it as graphical representation. I'm just going to overwrite it, and here it is. So I made this one thicker, and I make this one, the next step down, blah blah blah. Okay, so I have already finished doing all the settings, so I'm just gonna go here real quick. Oops, these are the property manager. As we said, we already have the different graphic representation for all 4 elevations, and then on the graphic overrides, I have the combinations made for each side. Back, front, and all of them have the same configurations, 4 different pen sets, and then solid, silhouette, and all that stuff. So once all this is ready and verified, now you want to make sure that you save that in your view settings. So here I have the south elevation view, but it's not saving the graphical override. So I'm just going to go here to the view settings, and I'm going to make sure that it has the layer combination that you want to have, that has the pen set. In this case, I'm going to change for graphical representation, which is, this is pretty cool because you can have a different pen set for your elevations and for your plants and stuff like that. So
I'm gonna have graphical override. This is gonna be the south, in this case is the front, so I'm gonna apply the front here, and I'm gonna click OK. So once I set that up, I see that the graphical override is applied to that elevation. You may also want to go to the elevation settings. I do like shadows, so you may not like them. I just think, they add another layer of depth. And I think that is pretty cool. So I'm just gonna go here to my east elevation, go to the elevation settings. I'm gonna turn on shadows as well. Okay. I'm gonna go to the view settings, and I'm gonna make sure that I have the layer combination that I want, the pen set that I want, and the graphical override. In this case, is east is right. Elevation right. Okay, I'm just gonna open it, see if it's working the way it's supposed to, and it is working. As you can see here, the shadow is kind of overriding some of the information. Yeah, let me see here, that's right. You can tweak those shadows, elevation settings. I'm gonna go to the shadow here, and it has both pens, the same pen on fill and background. So I'm just gonna change the background to empty or transparent, because I do wanna be able to see, give me a second here. So it's a foreground fill. I think it's yeah. I'm gonna set it to, I don't know, 75% and transparent, and that should give you the possibility, to see the lines. I do like to be able to see the lines through the shadows. So it's a setting that you may want to adjust as well. And the north elevation, again, I'm going to go to elevation settings. I'm going to enable sun shadow. I'm going to change again this to 75% with the background empty. Here we go. And then I'm going to go to the view settings, and I'm going to set layers fine, graphical representation, elevation back. So I'm going to open that elevation and see, make sure that it's represented properly. That's good. Okay, so I have added these into an elevation sheet just for reference, because I have my trackpad in. And as you can see here, the different objects have all the different line qualities as specified. So that's pretty cool. Compressing some video in the background, so that may take a little bit longer than I would want to. But I don't know. I think this is more like what we have been used to having, different line qualities and representations. So I hope the tutorial helps. Once you have those views configured, again, this should be just also be part of your template. So whenever you go to the elevations, you should know that you're going to be working with graphical overrides, the pen sets, and layer combinations that you need to have for that. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. I hope it was helpful. See you next time.